نحمده ونصلي على رسوله الكريم أما بعد. So we are continuing with our Arabic grammar lessons, and we are currently in the discussion of the mabni words, words which have a fixed structure. Their last vowel change does not occur, so their last vowel does not change with the changing of a word governing them. And last time we went through the pronouns, the dhama'ir or mudmarat, and we discussed the different types of pronouns, how they appear, if they're muttasil or munfasil, and what state they would, what position they would have in a sentence, grammatically speaking, if they're mubtada, if they're khabar, etc. And then right now we're going to discuss something called asma'ul ishara. These are demonstrative nouns, so they're used to indicate something or towards something, a meaning that has been alluded to. This is known as musharun ilay. So simply, it's a noun which indicates upon an indicated person or thing. So that was very short. There isn't much information that you need to be aware of for the demonstrative pronouns in terms of nahwa. You just have to know that they can do whatever a noun can do in terms of their grammatical position. They could be, and we've gone over the signs of a noun, saying that they could be al-ikhbar anhu and al-ikhbar bihi, and etc. Then we have al-ism al-mawsul. These are relative nouns. We now have relative nouns. So relative nouns are words or nouns which are used just to mark a clause is coming after them. So we call these clauses relative clauses as well. So it's attached. So this is a noun that requires a relative clause attached after it for the sentence to be complete. So this definition here is saying that it's more of a alama for identifying what a relative or ism al-mawsul is, rather than a complete definition. But but you could understand the gist of the definition of a relative noun from reading it, because if you see a word and you notice that it's a noun, but it requires a clause after it to give proper meaning, then you could identify that word as a relative noun. So another way of saying that, as I've explained before, is that it's just a word which marks that a relative clause is going to occur after it. So the sentence that will occur after it will be a jumla khabariya, and it'll be a sentence which can be nounal or verbal, and it's giving information, and it will have a pronoun referring back to the ism al-mawsul. And we see the nouns of mawsula. They are alladhi. So if you recite in the Quran often, then you'll come across this word a lot. Alladhi, ara'ayta alladhi yukadhibu bid-din. So this is very common. So if you recite in the Quran, this should amplify your understanding a little bit of some of the words and the context and the way that the words are being used. Then you have allati, which is the feminine form. So you could just translate that as which or that. Then you have alladhani and allatani, and those are the masculine dual and feminine dual in the marfu' state. If they're in the mansub or majrur, there will be allathaini or allataini, as we have learned near one of the earlier lessons, where we explained the appearance of words when they are marfu, mansub or majrur. We said the dual is normally represented by an alif in marfu and a ya in mansub and majrur. Then you have ula and alladhina. So these are for the masculine plural. Then you have allati, allawati, and allai, which are for feminine plural. You have man and ma, and both of these terms can be used for masculine and feminine words. Man means basically who, and ma means what. In this, if it's being a mawsul, we have seen ma being used for nafi, but in this lesson we're learning that ma can also be used to as a relative noun, so that or which or what. Ayyun and ayyatun also mean which. Dhu, which is in the meaning of alladhi. So we've come across dhu before when we discussed those 6 specific nouns which occur with alif in mansub, waw in marfu, and ya in majrur. So that was abun, akhun, hamun, hun, famun, and dhu. So the word dhu can be in the meaning of alladhi, but this is generally in a specific dialect, which is of the Thai, and there's a noun here. But if it's not that, because you might find it sometimes, you might find it better to translate dhu in a sentence as alladhi, if you think that makes more sense. Then you have alif lam, which is also in the meaning of, which can be in the meaning of alladhi. And this is when it's sila. This means, this is referring to the clause that occurs after it, is an ismul fa'il or ismul maf'ul. For example, al-akilu Abu Bakr, al, and then akilu. Akilu comes after alif lam, so is Abu Bakr. That eater is alladhi akala Abu Bakr, which means alladhi akala Abu Bakr, the one that ate is Abu Bakr. And that's the example of ismul fa'il. And then you have example of ismul maf'ul. So this, when we're talking about fa'il and maf'ul here, we aren't talking about the grammatical position of a word. We're talking about literally being on the pattern of fa'ilun or maf'ulun. So you have al-ma'kulu tuffahun. So alladhi ukila tuffahun. Ma'kul is maf'ul, is in the maf'ul position. It's an object. So, and the best thing to represent that would be a na'ib fa'il, and that is on the pattern of fu'ila for 3-letter words, 3-letter verbs. So we have ukila. So alladhi ukila tuffahun. So al-ma'kulu means alif lam. In al-ma'kulu alif lam means alladhi. So al-ma'kulu tuffahun means alladhi ukila tuffahun. That which is consumed is an apple. And just a quick note about ma and man. You could say man is used for rational beings and ma is used for irrational beings or objects, I guess you could say, things which aren't living. Or actually, rational is a better word. Rational is referring to sentient beings like humans, because humans have consciousness, that has a higher level of consciousness. You could use who for an animal as well, like who did that, and someone says the cat did it. Then in response to that, then it makes sense. But generally, it's referring to humans, angels, jinns, and even Allah is sometimes referred with man. Moving on, the a'id. So a'id just means the pronoun in the sentence that comes after ismul mawsul. It can be omitted if it is a maf'ul bihi, and it doesn't cause confusion once it's dropped. For example, قام الذي أكرمت. So the one I honored. So he stood. الذي أكرمت, the one I honored. So here أكرمته, there was a who that was originally after أكرمت, because as we said, that there needs to be a pronoun in the word, the sila of the ismul mawsul, the word, that the sentence that occurs after the ismul mawsul, referring back to it. And alladhi in this situation is the ismul mawsul, and akramtu doesn't have a pronoun referring back to it. Rather, akrama is a verb, a past tense verb, and tu is a first person pronoun, which is marfu', and alladhi isn't being referenced here. So according to the principle and rule, there should be a dhamir referencing akram to who, like an object pronoun, a dhamir mansub muttasil should be there, but it isn't, because the context allows us to understand what is being referred to. The words ayu and ayatun, so we said they are mawsul, but they are actually both mu'rab, except in situations where the beginning of their relative clause, their sila, is omitted. So when we say they are mu'rab, that means their vowels can change, they won't be mabni. So their last vowel signs could change depending on the word governance. However, some say and some read it mabni when ayyun or ayyatun is mudaf and the beginning of the sila is omitted, so it's not there, it's not present in the words, so the beginning of the sila. For example, there's a Quran verse which says ثُمَّ لَنَنْزِعَنَّ مِنْ كُلِّ شِيعَةٍ أَيُّهُم is where we're looking أَشَدُّ عَلَى الرَّحْمَنِ عِتِيًّا, and some are saying that it should be أَيُّهُم هُوَ أَشَدُّ عَلَى الرَّحْمَنِ عِتِيًّا, and the pronoun huwa was omitted, which and it was the beginning of the sila, and because it was omitted and ayu is mudaf to whom, they are saying that ayu here is mabni. Now and then we have another short discussion. We have asma'ul af'al. These are verbal nouns, so these are just nouns which have the meaning of past tense verbs or imperative amr verbs. So they have the meaning of madi or amr. So كل اسم يكون بمعنى الأمر والماضي, so it's just every noun in the meaning of amr or madi. And you have for example ruwaida, which is a noun, and it means to give time, to give respite. So amhilhu or amhil zaydan, which means give Zayd time. And these nouns, although they're nouns, they will be mabni. So ruwaida zaydan, ruwaida is the word we're looking at, and it's a noun and it's mabni al-fath here. Then you also have hayhata zaydun, a ba'uda, which means to go far or to went far. So hayhata zaydun, Zayd went far. And you have ha umu, so that means khudu, which means to take. You have hayya, which means to come, or haysan, like hayya ala salah. You have makanak, which just means uthbut, like stay in your place, like be established. And alayka means it's necessary upon you. So then one my question is, are there any specific scales for an ismul fi'l, a noun which is in the meaning of a verb, based on any specific rules? So here it's saying walahu waznun qiyasiyun, so they do have a pattern which is based on rule, and that's when you see a word, a noun, it's on the pattern of fa'ali, right, and it's in the meaning of an imperative word, بمعنى الأمر من الثلاثي. So that just means that it's an imperative. It's in the meaning of an imperative verb, and its verbal form has 3 root letters. For example, nazali, which just means inzil, which means descend, or taraki, which means utruk, to leave. Something to take note in terms of interpretation and translation is that the pattern fa'ali sometimes has the meaning of a masdar, which was a root noun, and this is a definite root noun, meaning, for example, fajari, which can mean al-fujur, which can mean like the sin. Sometimes it can have the meaning of a mu'annath word, a mu'annath sifa, adjective. For example, fasaqi can be in the meaning of fasiqa, so corrupt one or sinful female, or laka'i, it's also in the meaning of laki'a, which means depraved one. So when you see words on the pattern of fa'ali, they can also be names for women, so female names like qatami, ghalabi, and hadari. Just take note that these last 3 points that we've discussed, they aren't from asma'ul af'al because they don't have verbal meanings. They just mentioned here because the word fa'ali, the pattern fa'ali, was brought up. Another very short subject is asma'ul aswat, so the noun of sound. So these are just nouns which represent sounds, like ghaq for a crow, ghaqi. So imagine in English you say woof, or you have like a knocking sound like taq or taq, or drip drop, or tip tap or something like that for water. So there's any word which you see in a text which is trying to express the sound of an animal, or the sound of an object, or the sound of anything, then that is also mabni, and it will be fixed on its wazn. And we'll do this as well, murakkabat. So remember we said there were 8 mabni words in total. This is the 6th one. So compound words. So كل اسم نكتب من كلمتين ليست بينهما نسبة. So these are nouns which are compounded from words which don't have any relationship of isnad between them. So it's not the relationship between words you'd find that are common in sentences. So when I'm stringing words together to create a sentence, there is a attributive relationship between the words. This is known as isnad. We've discussed before. So a relationship which is used to create meaning between the words. This is known as isnad. And when we're talking about murakkab words here, we are not referring to this type of relationship between the words. And we're also not referring to words which are joined together through idafa, annexation. So it's basically, in simple terms, it's every noun which has been joined from 2 words that have no link between them. So if there's 2 words there, you might be thinking, okay, what vowel would the first word have and what vowel would the second word have? So if the second part of a murakkab noun is treated as a harf, then it will be mabni al-fath. This just means, I wrote this quite confusingly, to be honest. So it just means that if you assume that there is a particle in between the 2 words, then it will be mabni al-fath. For example, if I said ahada ashara, which just means 10, it's as though I have taken the particle ahad 1 and 10. So sorry, ahad ashara, which means 11. So it's 1 and 10, which becomes 11. 1 plus 10 to be 11. So when I say ahad ashara, it's 2 words put together, and it's as though the particle waw was omitted. So it's as though there was a letter that was removed from there. And because of this, I'd recite both parts of both words. So ahad, I'll read that mabni al-fath, and I'll read ashara mabni al-fath as well. And this is the case for all of the numbers from 11 to 19 except for ithna ashara. In ithna ashara, it will be the ithna part, the first part, will be according to the rules of the dual mu'rab words. So it'll be ithna if it's marfu, and ithnay if it's mansub or majroor. So if you consider that there is no hidden letter or particle between the 2 words, then they say there are 3 ways of reciting them, but the best way is to make the first part mabni al-fath and read the second part as though it's a ghayr munsarif mu'rab word. For example, and we've come across this, we said when we were going over the 9 categories or 9 conditions of ghayr munsarif, we said tarkib was one. So, and we gave the example of ba'ala bakka, and Ba'al is this. We said that this was made up of 2 words, Ba'al, which is a city, and Bakka was the name of a king, and both of these words were put together. And Ba'al is the name of an idol, maybe Allah. And Ba'al Bakka is now the name of a place, or was the name of a place. And Bakka, that part of the compound word, will be read ghayr munsarif, and Ba'al will be, the lam on Ba'al will be read mabni al-fath. So you'll read Ba'ala Bakka. So you could be Ba'ala so ghayr munsarif, if to just remind you, when it's marfu, it will be represented by a dhamma, and when it's mansub or majroor, it will be represented by a fatha. A fatha if it's if it's ghayr munsarif. And we leave it at that for today, inshallah. Please leave any questions in the comment sections and feedback. Wa akhiru da'wana alhamdulillahi rabbil alameen.